Hello, dear friends, I'm with you. For a long time, we have been waiting for the update of the Llibrary mod, and now the developers have finally pleased us. However, it is worth saying that there was one mod update, since my last video spans the flame, but it mostly fixed the problems of previous versions, rather than making any global changes. As in the last update, this time there will be no new creatures either. Alas, but there have been enough changes to talk about them, and we must pay tribute to the developers. They know how to impress with their creation. The first thing that catches your eye is the changes that have occurred with the dragons. Their textures have changed. Boys and girls can now be distinguished by appearance. This difference they certainly lacked. Now it is easy to recognize the boys from afar by the spots on the wings. Girls don't have such spots, but up close, if you look closely at the head, you can see that the boys have straight horns and the girls have slightly curved ones. By the way, boys are also more successful robbers, because in their nests, loot is richer than that of girls. And yes, spots on the wings of males do not appear immediately after hatching, but as they grow. In addition, the older the dragon gets, the darker it becomes. The dragon's nests have also changed their appearance. Now they really look more like nests. They are just a burnt bald spot, as it was before. Dragon caves, by the way, have also been somewhat redone. They have become more spacious and interesting, but not only girls and boys of dragons differ in textures. Ice dragons now have a horn on their nose and a different tail shape. And she's different, because ice dragons are able to dive under the water and swim there. The sight is truly making you forget everything in the world and stick. The appearance of the dragons has changed. Their shards and skeletons have changed accordingly. The skulls of fire dragons are different from the skulls of ice dragons. The textures of the skeletons have also been modified somewhat. In my opinion, they have become even more beautiful. By the way, for lovers of military and hunting trophies, a little joy, now you can decorate your homes, not only with dragon skulls, but also with other creatures. Hippogriffs, cyclops, basilisks, stymphalian birds, trolls, amphiptera, and sea snakes. The dragon's flight animation has changed. It has become more beautiful, and now it is somewhat reminiscent of the flight of phypters. Dragons are able to lay all sorts of turns, turn around almost on the spot, and so on. The attacks have also been redesigned. The dragon raid has become more realistic. Just look at them. They pour fire and ice jets on the enemies. It looks like a bomber raid. However, the damage from fire and ice has been somewhat reduced, so we have a chance to survive in case of a sudden attack from the air. Frozen blocks have been redesigned. Now they have new textures. By the way, the blocks that the dragons freeze or burn out gradually recover over time. Of course, if they were not turned into absolute ash or dragon ice. Ash and dragon ice have a new use. You can fold the ashes like this and get charcoal out of it. Well, dragon ice can be converted into dense ice. Ash and dragon ice have a new crafting. He's like this. The artificial intelligence of the dragon has been refined, and now the tame dragons are able to follow us in flight. With the right click of the dragon staff on the dragon, we choose whether it will sit still, follow us, or wander. The dragon will not run like a cat or a dog, literally on the heels and get in the way. But if we get a good distance away, it will take off, follow us, and circle. The dragon may well land on the ground himself somewhere nearby, but if you need him right now, then just blow on the flute, and he will throw himself to the ground like a stone. For dragons, we can now change the point of the house. And this is done with the help of a dragon staff in a squat. Dragon scales, like the scales of the sea serpent, can now be collected and stored in blocks. By the way, These blocks are quite beautiful, so they can be used for construction. Dragon blocks are also light and frost-resistant. In addition, dragon scale blocks can be used to create dragon blast furnaces. It is worth telling about these blast furnaces separately and in more detail. To create a dragon blast furnace, we will need 4 types of blocks: dragon bone blocks, which are crafted from dragon bones. Blast furnace bricks are ice and fire, depending on what scales you used when creating. The core of the furnace is made of these very bricks of the dragon's heart, again ice or fire, as well as the blast furnace mouth made of iron and dragon bricks. In total, you will need 8 blocks of dragon bones, 17 blocks of dragon bricks, 1 core, and 1 vent for 1 furnace. Of course, it should all be of the same type, ice or fire. Now we need to lay down our blast furnace, which is a multi-block structure. The first layer is laid out with dragon bricks with a cross, and along the edges of this cross, we stick blocks of bones. In the very middle of the second layer, we put the core, and next to it the vent. We fill everything else with dragon bricks. Well, the third, upper layer repeats the first one. If the oven is assembled correctly, it will slightly change its appearance. It will have these flaps on the sides, and it will begin to emit light. The fuel for such a stove is dragon's breath, fire or ice, depending on the type of stove. So to activate the fire furnace, you need a fire dragon, and for an ice one, respectively, an ice one. So why should we sit on a dragon and blow on the stove or something, you ask? But not necessarily. If you have a pet dragon, tie it next to the stove, closer to the vent. It will do everything by itself. If there is no manual, wild will do, but of course, this is a very risky enterprise. Well, it is logical that it will not work to tie the dragon with a string. In addition, he will incinerate any fence to which he is tied, so this case is very unreliable. But there is a way out, especially for such powerful creatures as dragons. The mod developers have come up with these chains. Unlike ropes, they don't break, but are crafted from pieces of iron in this way. This still doesn't solve our fence problem. But even here, our wonderful developers got out of it and created for us such fireproof fences made of dragon bones. We will tie our dragon to them, and so that he does not spin too much and is not distracted by the sides, we will stretch him between 2 chains at once. When the dragon has done its job, you can untie it and ride it about your business. Well, if he's wild, then it's best to leave him like that, shutting off his breath with some kind of fire or ice-resistant wall. By the way, if you smear the chain with a slug, you will get a sticky chain. True, it is sticky only for one time. As soon as you take it off, it will turn into a regular one. With the help of a sticky chain, you can link 2 creatures together, or not to milk and capture an entire village. Mobs can be linked with chains in several layers. Then the coupling will turn out to be more rigid, and they run in different directions less than on a single chain. But back to our dragon blast furnace. Why did we bother with her so much at all? But here's why. If you put iron and dragon's blood there, then, as a result, you will get dragon steel, respectively fire or ice, from which especially powerful weapons, tools, and armor are made. Keep in mind that dragon's blood is the catalyst for this process. If you mix up and put the blood of a fire dragon into an ice furnace, then you will get not steel, but a piece of dragon ice at the exit. Accordingly, on the contrary, it is not worth putting ice blood in a fiery furnace unless you want to spend it on a block of ashes. In general, if you just want to get dragon ice or ashes from materials you don't need, just shove them into the stove and make the dragon work. Well, now let's look at the new armor and weapons. Dragon steel weapons are very different from anything that has been up until now. It does even more damage than troll weapons, which used to be the most powerful. Troll weapons have an awfully long rollback. There is no dragon steel weapon for this problem, and there is much more damage even from a shovel. I'm not talking about axes and swords. The fire dragon steel weapon ignites the target for about 15 seconds and throws it back pretty much. Ice steel turns the target into a block of ice. Both types of steel cause enormous damage and easily send quite large dragons to their forefathers. Dragon steel armor has increased protection against dragon breath. Dragon armor has become available to us not only for us, but also for dragons. And by the way, a silver version of armor has also appeared for dragons, which is also very cool. As far as this armor is strong, there is no information anywhere yet, but this is not so important. But now we have the opportunity to put new beautiful armor on our dragons. A large selection is always good. If you have accumulated too much dragon steel, then you can easily store it in blocks. Of the useful dragon lotions, we have added creative meat, with which any wild dragon immediately becomes tame. This is a very useful thing for those who are testing their builds, building maps, and so on. Another interesting thing is spoiled dragon food. She has craft. You will probably be surprised. Why feed dragons with spoiled meat? In fact, it makes sense. If you have too many dragons, or you do not want your pet to grow to such an extent that it does not fit what you have on the couch, but even in the house, just give him such food, and he will stop growing. That's how your dragon will forever remain a beloved little fire-breathing lizard. How to cancel the effect of the poison, I have not found, maybe not yet. Changes in fashion have affected not only dragons. We have added a number of different legendary weapons that are crafted from rare drops from creatures. Hippogriffs now occasionally drop claws, from which you can craft a sword like this. It says on it that it causes secret wounds, and accordingly, additional damage. To be honest, I didn't understand what he was good at. Compared to other types of weapons, it seems to me so-so, except that the texture is interesting. Much more interesting to me was the tongue of the death worm and the gloves made of it. The damage to this thing is small, but you can drag the target to yourself, which is pretty cool. Well, this glove looks quite an entourage. A pixie magic wand made from the wings of the same pixies. After her, small thieves seem to me to be very necessary creatures. Crafting this wand is not cheap, but the effect is very interesting. The wand shoots magic from a distance, dealing 5 units of damage and causing the target to levitate. At the same time, pixie pollen is consumed. It looks awesome. See for yourself. Speaking of pollen, we have the opportunity to farm it because you can now put a funnel under a can of pixies. I feel that now wild pixies will become a rarity on all maps. By the way, the artificial intelligence of the pixie-fipter flight has also been improved, and the feathers of Amphiptera can now be crafted, like this McCue Whittle Beater. She throws enemies back, and throws them up, and also breaks shields. And yes, I almost forgot, since the previous update, Amphipters can be treated. This is done with the help of cocoa beans. The Cyclops eye can be held instead of a shield or just held in your hand, and it will weaken all nearby hostile creatures. Well, yes, they can be understood. Anyone would get on the nerves of a huge eye in the hands of an opponent. Sometimes it is possible to knock out a tear from the sirens, and with the help of it, to make a flute like this. This flute will make anyone fall in love with you for 10 seconds, even a monster. Of course, at this time he will not be able to attack. This is followed by a kind of rollback. A scepter is crafted from the basilisk's eye, with which you can attack like a basilisk. I liked him because he can be taken in the left hand, and while he is attacking the enemy, you can wield a sword and finish off. From the feathers of Stymphalian birds, 2 new weapons are being crafted at once, a dagger and a bunch of feathers. The dagger looks good and seems to have a fast attack, but a bunch of feathers seemed more interesting to me. It throws feathers in 8 directions around the player at once, which can be very helpful if you are surrounded by a ring. For example, a crowd of zombies. A sea trident can be crafted from the fangs of a sea serpent. It is capable of punching multiple enemies. To be honest, it seemed to me that it works in a strange way. It breaks through the second enemy only when the first one has incomplete health, disappears after the first use, but I hope it will fix it in the future. A hippocampus flapper is made from its caudal fin. In general, this is a comical weapon. It is somewhat discouraging and slows down the victim for a short time, although the damage from it is not serious at all. In the hand, this thing looks quite funny and is suitable for some comic tournaments on fishtails, and finally, a swarm of myrmics. It's also quite an original contraption. It is made of hard wax, myrmic's eggs and sticks, and there are 2 types, like the myrmics themselves. The thing is disposable, that is, it will disappear after the first use, but with the help of it, you can summon 5 myrmics to protect you. They will do this for 30 seconds, after which they will disappear. By the way, myrmic's eggs, as well as desert hippogriff worms, can now be used in crafting as a substitute for chicken. From the configuration, we added the ability to determine which blocks will or will not be broken by dragons, and you can also configure the base attack power for myrmics. Among other things, the developers have added 13 new patterns for flags, so now there are 15 of them. Here are the crafts of all 15, and at the same time, the crafts of legendary weapons and items made of dragon steel. That's basically all I can tell you about this update. On my own, I want to add that the version is still a little damp. So far, there are a lot of bugs in it, but I believe that it will be corrected in the future. I hope this information helped you in some way. Put your fingers up if that's the case. And see you soon. Bye-bye.